Hauka, Tamawa. My name is Paul Gonzalez, and I'm from the Ipai Nation of San Isabel. And I currently work at Indian Health Council as the Tribal Practices Coordinator for the TIPWIC program, which is Tribal Practices Wellness in Indian Country. And I'm honored to have been asked to come and say a few words about how food is important, indigenous foods are important culturally, and how it impacts the way we live, how we feel, and things like that. So, first of all, we talk about our ancestors when they used to gather acorns and grains and hunt and all those types of things. A lot of the foods and the grains were really pure and without no additives or anything like that. So it really helped our people sustain health in a good way. And as the generations move on, we get adapted to other things which are not so healthy and introduced to things that are not so good for us. And so we're trying to get back to what that is, what that was. And so we go back and talk about how what we eat affects the way we think, the way we feel, how we act. A lot of times, we've been introduced to a lot of things that are a lot of fat, a lot of sugar, the flours, the breads, things like that, which make us lethargic, and we have highs, we have lows. Our minds can wander, and just feeling kind of off, offbeat. So that's what we're here to talk about today, is how we can get back to getting back in sync with health and food. And so I'll talk about how what we eat impacts our daily lives. It impacts how we teach our children coming up, and teaching them the proper ways of foods and stuff like that. So we're trying to get back to culture. Culture has been the main driver for health and well-being. And I've always said culture is prevention. So if we get back to the culture of eating indigenous foods, then we prevent diabetes, heart disease, all these things, high blood pressure, stuff like that. And also in our culture, there are herbs to correct and to help those things, with diabetes, high blood pressure, all those things like that. So there's natural foods that we can eat and put in our bodies that are going to help us with a lot of the diseases and prevent some of the diseases. So once again, culture is prevention in food to start with, because what we put in our mouth affects us as a whole. And so I always, would say is like, what you do today, you'll have to pay for tomorrow. So what we put in our system today, we're going to pay for that tomorrow. So if we put something that's good in our system, then we're going to get pretty good payoff, with health and stuff like that. So I just wanted to express how important it is to think about what we're putting into our mouths and into our system, into our bodies, because the outcome can be either positive or negative. When I was growing up, my grandmother would always make shawi. That's how we say it in Ipai language. And I knew when she was making it, and I would stay close by because I'd be called to clean out the pot with a nice big wooden spoon and a little bit of salt, which is not good, but I used a little bit of that anyways. But it was taught to that how that was, it's like gold, it's just really precious, and it takes a long time to make. The process is very long. So nothing went to waste. And as I was growing up, I know some people might have been taught the same thing, but we ate everything that was made for us, no matter what it was. So we didn't waste food, and we ate everything that was put in front of us. And usually it was good anyway, so I didn't have no problem with that. And then as I was taught, it's like when you're hunting, whatever life you take, you have to use that. You have to eat it. You can't just be killing stuff for no reason. You have to, so I've eaten some odd stuff in my time, but I've learned my lesson that way, so hunting was a big part as I was growing up. Raised up in the mountains, gathering acorns, hunting a lot of rabbits, deer. I've started this new venture. Well, actually, I was a culture coordinator before about 20 years ago. But getting back into this position of being able to go out and gather, collect medicine, collect food, and all these things is bringing back the importance to me, that how important it is to learn these things and share and learn more from other people that might have even more knowledge, and put it all together so we can share it for the generations to come.
Hey everyone, my name is Joseph Rodriguez, and my tribal affiliation is the Rincon Band of Luiseno Indians.
Hello, my name is Justin Rodriguez, and my tribal affiliation is with the Rincon Band of Luiseno Indians.
So I am part of YAC, which stands for the Youth Advisory Council. And here at YAC and the Indian Health Council, we help with organizing outreach events, learning basic research skills along the way, and basically just developing culturally tailored messaging in order to help reduce commercial tobacco use here in our Native communities. So I joined YAC primarily because I was personally affected by someone struggling with alcohol abuse. But similar to alcohol abuse, I know others struggle with tobacco abuse and other drugs as well. In my experience, I know that substance abuse of any kind can shorten lifespans. It can break familial bonds. And here at YAC, we are trying to get away from that and move towards healthy lifestyles, healthy eating, taking care of our mental health, things like that. And that was a big reason why I wanted to join YAC and work with the Indian Health Council.
I joined YAC because I understand, the commercial tobacco use and its presence in our community, and the harms it could impose, especially on the Native youth. Understanding, the traditional use of tobacco as medicine, culturally and spiritually, I understand that commercial tobacco use has no place in our community where it can lead to shortened lifespans and, addiction. So as part of YAC, I really want to learn about new ways, to approach commercial tobacco use and, making sure it's as inaccessible as possible to the youth in our community. Now we want to introduce an activity we hope you will do with your loved ones. Having a better sense of well-being and a support system are prevention strategies to help not partake in commercial tobacco or substance abuse. Practicing gratitude promotes a better sense of well-being and strengthens relationships.
Like Justin said, this activity is designed to incorporate more gratitude into your life when you're thinking about food, loved ones, and traditions. The following activity has 5 prompts to answer with your loved ones.
So my response for prompt 4 involves a story about how to make a traditional Luiseno food. Some people know it as wee wish or acorn mush. And so where I live on the reservation, on our property, we have some flat rocks that my family built a garden around. And one day when I was younger, I was curious and I asked my dad about them, and he told me about the process of making wee wish. So you need a mortar and a pestle. The pestle could be like a smaller rock, and the mortar was the larger rock, the flat rock, and where you could grind the acorns up into. And over time, repeatedly doing it over and over again, the little indentations would form within the rocks. And so, hearing about this story, it makes me, happy that I get to learn about, the, traditional way to make a Luiseno food. And, it makes me proud of my Luiseno heritage and how, I'm still here exactly where my ancestors wanted me to be, and pass on these traditions, to, future generations.
So my response was to prompt number 5. And in that response, I talked about someone that means a lot to me in this very moment in my life. At the moment, I am attending University of California, Los Angeles, also known as UCLA. Here with me is my brother, Justin. He is a great individual, very intelligent, very kind, that helps, guide me, helps keeps me grounded, in a very large place like UCLA, a predominantly white institution. He's always there for me when I need someone to talk to about my mental health, my academic struggles, my physical health, things like that. I really don't know what I would do without him, because it's a really great feeling to have someone beside you that you have grown up with your entire life. And I couldn't appreciate Creator anymore, because he's really done the most for me by giving me Justin. I also want to pay respect and tribute to an organization we have here at UCLA, ASA, which stands for American Indian Student Association. Something cool we did a couple weeks back for Indigenous Peoples Day was, we camped out sort of at the Bruin Bear statue we have here at UCLA. What we did was, we dressed it up with a Pendleton blanket. We posted up posters next to the Bruin Bear all day that we made the night before. That emphasized Indigenous issues going on in the nation right now. It was a really great way to prioritize Indigenous creators, artists, and voices, and just have some fun with my Indigenous community. I really love them a lot, and yeah, that was something great that happened in my life recently.
Cut venison into bite-sized chunks. Remove any sinew membrane and large pieces of fat. Chop onions, celery, potatoes, and carrots into large pieces. Mince the garlic. Add the oil to the pot. When oil is shimmering, add the venison meat. Sauté for about 5 to 7 minutes or until the meat is browned. Remove the meat from the pot and set aside. Turn the heat down to medium-low and add all the chopped onion, potato, celery, and carrot. Sauté for about 8 to 10 minutes or until slightly soft. Then add the minced garlic. Sauté for another minute. Add the salt and pepper, the can of diced tomatoes, three to 4 dashes of Worcestershire sauce, and the beef broth. Then add the venison meat back into the pot. Cover and bring to a boil. Once it's reached a boil, turn the heat down to low and simmer for 1 to 2 hours or until the meat is tender. Serve the stew and enjoy! You will need prickly pears, raw cane sugar, also known as turbinado sugar, a lemon, and kosher salt. Prickly pears can be gathered or purchased. In our case, we gathered it, removed the spines, and cleaned the prickly pears before freezing them. The fruits were defrosted when they were ready to use. We start off with 10 prickly pears, which are then halved to scoop out the flesh. You may need more pears depending on their size. Zest the lemon first for ease. Place in a sauce pot. And a half cup of raw cane sugar. Not forgetting to include the 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Turn the heat to medium-high and bring to a boil. You can add water if you want a thinner syrup. Once the mix comes to a boil and has been reduced, you will want to run this through a fine mesh strainer to separate the syrup from any remaining seeds and flesh. Once cool, you can transfer this into a container for storage. This recipe makes enough syrup for 2 to 3 people. If you add water, you can stretch out these portions even more. We would like to thank our Purepecha relative Abe Sanchez with the Chia Cafe Collective for his cold bread, or in our case, grill bread recipe. This is an alternative to fry bread that uses traditional ingredients local to Southern California. Use your favorite fry bread recipe and substitute or add the recommended ingredients. You will need whole wheat flour, mesquite flour, baking powder, salt, chia seeds, and milk. We first start off with the whole wheat flour and mesquite flour. If using your own recipe, a ratio of 1 to 4 mesquite flour to wheat flour is recommended. Here we use 2 cups of whole wheat flour, followed by a half cup of mesquite flour. You can gather your own mesquite locally to make mesquite flour, or purchase it how we did. This mesquite flour comes to use from the Comac Indian Cooperative for healthy communities and habitats. Next, we add a half tablespoon of baking powder. Add salt to taste, although a pinch should be more than enough depending on how big your batch is. Add an 1/8 cup of chia seeds and 1 1/4 cup of milk. Combine the wet and dry ingredients with your hands and start kneading. Don't be afraid to get messy. Now roll your dough into balls depending on the size of bread you want to make. Flatten and shape the dough. We used a propane grill here, but a charcoal grill works as well. Just make sure to grill over an open flame. Adjust your heat as needed or bring the dough closer to the coals by using a mesh screen. Make sure not to let it get too charred. Grill on each side for about 1 minute, flipping them 2 to 3 times. The bread is done once it has fluffed up and turned golden brown. This amount should make enough servings for 4 to 6 people. Here we finished our grill bread with our prickly pear syrup and topped it off with some powdered sugar. Delicious!
Hanik Ainti Luinimpi. Hello, my name is Pedro. My family is Kamobal Maya from Guatemala, and I currently serve as the project coordinator for the Strategies Project at Indian Health Council, which is aiming to reduce and prevent youth drug use. That said, today's topic is about food and how it ties to culture. It provides a lot for us as people, especially as a society, whether it be commonality that we find with foods that we like, cultural foods, specifically dishes, a time to bond or connect socially. I will be focusing a little bit more on what family meals is and the importance of what that is in not only drug use prevention, but just maintaining good mental health. Additionally, studies have also shown that kids who do have consistent meals with their families are less likely to develop issues with their emotional health, whether it's feelings of depression or thoughts of suicide, have less problems with violence, and additionally, it helps decrease the risk of sexual behaviors that are risky. And what research also looks at is specifically what within family meals is it that is preventative, or in this case, protective of youth from going on to participating in challenging behaviors. And one thought is that it is family connection, or just connection in general, bonding, and more specifically for caregivers, parents, guardians, older aunties, uncles. How can we engage with children? What are appropriate times and what are topics to talk about? It is with this family connection that we see kids who do better in school and report having higher self-esteem as well, which is very, very important when we think of mental health in general. In terms of connection, topics can range from anything about how was school today? Did anything good happen? Is there something that's troubling you? It's really using that time during meals to get more out of your kids, and being able to sit with them on a routine basis, on a schedule, lets them know that they can depend on you and they come to expect something in terms of their family unit as well. On top of the communication, it is developing that understanding of who your child is and who they are becoming. And when we think about that, using that time can also be used to see if there are changes in our youth that you might be able to point out earlier, especially if there are things that could be challenging or problematic in the future, giving us time to intervene and talk with our youth and teach them those skills and have those conversations that will help them go down a better road, or at least have an avenue to have a conversation and vent and feel better and have someone validate them. Another important thing to do when we are having family meals or meals with our loved ones is sharing. And when we think of Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous values, sharing is something that is super relevant, super important to Indigenous communities, as it comes to demonstrate the interconnectedness that we all have together. And that ties into not only who am I, but who do I belong to or share this world with, whether it be their community, their society at large, and then the world in general, making us feel responsible and having that type of care for not only others, but Mother Nature itself. Better yet is using this time spent during family meals to really gauge where your youth are in terms of their identity with their culture. How connected are they? Are they experiencing any trouble that as adults, as caregivers, we may be able to help navigate them through so long as we have their permission. And these things can really come down to things like what values and what traditional beliefs do we hold? What responsibilities do we have to one another? And how will my actions now impact my community and future generations to come? That said, focusing on these strengths or in the strengths found in the answers to these questions, can we better help support youth, build their confidence, feel connected, which in turn will end up leading to substance use prevention and better outcomes with mental health. On top of this, we can also describe or have discussions about culture, which could at the same time increase cultural connectedness to who they are. And as Paul had mentioned, we have seen in the science, in the research, that culture is something that can be preventative. And a lot of that comes down to what are these things that as Indigenous people we have been carrying forth that have allowed us to become resilient against all these problems, all this trauma that has come from colonization, from intergenerational trauma. And again, focusing on these strengths that in the end will be protective and prevent youth from going down substance use or feeling disconnected from others and leading to loneliness, depression, suicidal ideation. Not only that, but it is really time for us to share with our youth what our thoughts and ideas are when it comes to mental health. And if we're thinking more specifically about substance use prevention, what expectations do you have of your children when they're at home, when they're visiting friends or family? What kind of environment are we creating for them? Additionally, does it feel safe for them to be able to share when they're sitting down and have family meals? It's such a very important thing as well. Another thing that we get from Indigenous knowledge is what is known as a traditional home. And according to some people or some studies, or again, things that are passed down from generation, a traditional Indigenous home was a home that was clear of anything that could, in the end, come to hurt our children. It meant creating a home where children can explore their surroundings, learn more about their environment. So as adults, especially as parents, as guardians, what messages are we sending and what environment are we creating for our kids to feel safe, to make their own choices that are within limits and are appropriate for their development? It is very beneficial to use the time that we have during family meals to have those conversations with our children, and in the end be able to build within them the skills and the knowledge and the values that will lead them down a path where they can be happy, where they could thrive, and hopefully not end up using things like substances and experiencing suicidal ideation. To summarize, how are we using this time to be there for our children, have them depend on us or feel like they can connect with us? Additionally, if it's not something that as family we can do or guardians, there are a lot of programs and opportunities out there in the community really showcasing these values that we have as Indigenous people and connecting youth to their culture. Again, culture is prevention and it leads to resilience, which in the end is the reason why we are still here today.
Indian Health Council, Inc. is committed to nurturing a balance of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. If you or someone you love is struggling with substance use-related issues, you may call our behavioral health department at 760-749-1410 extension 5249 for more information about our services and further resources.